Though women authors were not entirely unknown in the period, Christine, unlike, for example, Hildegard of Bingen, 260-odd years earlier, did not publish from the security of the cloister. She was a sophisticated, secular woman, enormously well-read and familiar with the most exclusive echelon of French society in a time of impressive cultural development. In a preprint culture, Christine first found work as a manuscript copyist before beginning to produce her own poetry and tracts. She waded confidently and prominently into one of the primary intellectual debates of the day, siding with Jean Gerson, the Chancellor of the University of Paris, against Pierre Coll, the Canon of Notre Dame, on the inadequacies of the best-selling poem Le Roman de la Rose. Some years before, she published City. Christine had written Épître au Dieu d'amour, a letter to the god of love, in which she criticised the author of the Roman de la Rose, Jean de Main, for what she considered a despicably silly portrayal of women. In The City, Christine expands her argument, pitting herself proudly and wittily against male writers, past and present. I confess, when I picked up The City of Ladies, I had read more about Christine than I had read by her. She is considered a canonical feminist writer, if not, outside academia, a particularly famous one. Le Livre de la Cité des Dames, as it was first published, was, Simone de Beauvoir noted, the first time that we see a woman take up her pen in defense of her sex. The book takes the form of a series of dialogues between the author and three allegorical figures, Reason, Justice, and Rectitude. We meet the author in 1405 as she is in the familiar process of retiring to bed, exhausted after work and childcare. Christine is a character in her own text, an ingénue who innocently repeats the misogynist arguments her reading has thrown up, and she initially portrays herself as despairing over women's lack of virtue. But the allegories wake her, berate her for sloth, and set about challenging her on her views about women. They explain that she is ignorant and misinformed by the prejudiced accounts she has read. And they summon a cast of historical characters to reinforce their arguments and recount the exemplary lives of the women who should be the first residents of an allegorical city where they will be recognized and protected. These include queens of classical history such as Penthesilea and Antiope, numerous female saints, and less famous figures such as a Roman woman who breastfed her own mother in prison. Reason argues, reasonably enough, that negative stereotypes are maintained through women's exclusion from the writing of history. Only by examining women's history from a woman's perspective can female virtue be recognized and celebrated. This project Christine undertook. The work was translated into English in 1521, with no new translation attempted until 1982. Within this period, the revolution in women's status sought by reason took place. Partly. Nearly every article and commentary I have read on Christine, from the critique of her conservative political theory by Sheila Delaney in the 1970s, to Tai Shani's 2019 Turner Prize-winning installation, DC Semiramis, seems nonetheless to see her status as a female author as inherently compromised or problematic. The techniques Christine adopts in City include the allegorical dream vision which simultaneously relates and glosses the author's journey. This was a highly typical medieval form, familiar from, say, Dante or Boccaccio. It is traceable to the 5th century Roman writer Macrobius's commentary on Cicero's dream of Scipio, and in the 6th century came Boethius's The Consolations of Philosophy, which features philosophy personified as a woman. Christine also draws on the exemplary biography genre, established in classical antiquity, or more specifically, the exemplary female biography, previously attempted by Ovid in Heroides and by Chaucer in The Legend of Good Women. Both men critiqued misogyny's effect on history, though admittedly in a rather more lackadaisical fashion. But while these writers have been praised more or less uncomplicatedly for their interventions, Christine has been second-guessed, her efforts undercut by a persistent focus on her own place or role in the work. Because her character self plays the role of devil's advocate in the text,